All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you're joining us from today in the world. You could have been anywhere but chose to spend time with us. I truly appreciate and value that and hope to return value to you in return for your time and attention. If you are joining me for the first time, my name is Niatu Benciential. I am the host. I'm the founder of Avenue Careers, and this is Avenue Careers Thursday, where we're about acting on your career with intention and bring your full authentic self into the process of job search, career development, career advancement, all of that. That's what we're about, and I want to be a positive force, a positive space to have important conversations of topics that are hopefully under discussed that we need to bring more to the fore in the public square. I'm really excited about today's episode with a dear friend of mine and a fellow amazing career coach I'll bring on shortly. And if you're joining us live, please be active in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from, your excitement, to be here today. And thank you, Noosh, for joining even during a conference. Really appreciate that. And if you're catching the replay, please comment hashtag replay in the comments as well. And I appreciate all of you giving a like and a share to the video to get more reach and hopefully help and impact more people. So without further ado, I'd love to bring on my guest, the amazing Cynthia Pong.
Hi,
Hello,
everyone.
how's it
Good,
going, Cynthia? Good to
good.
see
Very
you.
excited to be here. Hey, Anush. Hey, everyone else in the chat.
Yeah. And so for those of you who are not familiar with Cynthia, I'd love to go ahead and read out her bio to let you know the amazing resource you have in front of you today. So Cynthia Pong, JD, she's a lawyer by training, a former lawyer, is an award-winning career coach, speaker, and author of Don't Stay in Your Lane, the career change guide for women of color. She's an NYU trained lawyer turned career coach, and she founded her company Embrace Change in order to get women of color the money, power, and respect that they deserve. A wonderful and important mission. Um, in 2021, Cynthia created and launched the Embrace Change Leadership Accelerator for women of color. And many of her graduates have gone on to really prestigious fellowships, gone on to land amazing raises, paid speaking engagements, promotions, and the like from the wonderful tutelage and mentorship of Cynthia. Cynthia has some great credentials as well. She's been featured in The Atlantic, Good Morning America on NPR. So we're trying to get to where she is with these TV appearances. Um, and she's also shared the stage with Magic Johnson virtually. She's also a fellow LinkedIn top voice for job search and career. I'm very, appreciative to both share that honor with her as well. And fun facts: Cynthia is a proud introvert, a classic middle child, and an unapologetic Rottweiler enthusiast. Those I think are really cool dogs. What makes you love Rottweilers so much?
I know we were talking about this earlier, and people frequently want to know, but I love rooting for kind of the underdog in any kind of a situation. I think Rottweilers are really misunderstood dogs because they are so big, and people think, they're intimidating or they need a lot or what have you. But they're actually such super fun, cuddly, loving, and loyal dogs, and like that's a lot of my kind of personality traits as well. So I don't know. I just super
Uh-huh.
vibe with Rottweilers and hope to have one day. But
Gotcha, gotcha.
I don't know if there's any other dog lovers in the chat. We've got people from all over the world, so
Yeah, comments if you
well,
love, other underappreciated dogs. Maybe you are a
pitbull.
pit bull enthusiast or
Yeah,
something like that, right?
yeah.
But yeah, we got people from Romania today, Dallas, Texas, from Louisiana, from Maine. So really great swath of this country, and got international people
The
tuning in as well.
world.
So thank you all for joining. So please continue to say hello. Continue to let us know where you're commenting, where you're watching us from. And feel free to ask questions during this broadcast. We do want it to be interactive. We don't want it to be just me and Cynthia talking at you. As much as we can create a dialogue, we'd love to in the chats. And so, my little bit of housekeeping on that: if you have a question, type the word question before your text, which makes it easier for me to screen it out and hopefully put on screen and get to it during the conversation. So Cynthia, let's go ahead and get into it. The place I always want to start, because this is a career advancement and development job, job search, LinkedIn Live, is
Mhm.
understanding your origin story. And knowing your backstory is really important to give context to who you are and how you appear to us today. And so, can you share with us your career journey, any key moments or highlights that you believe really define your career, and help us understand your career that you have today?
Yeah, of course. So the first thing, although before I dive into it, I see you, Anush. I love that you used to have a Black Lab Rottie mix. So I'd love to hear the dog news in the chat and say just to echo what Niatu was saying. you all can use the chat to network and everything with each other too. I strongly believe in the power of all of us together when we join forces. So connect with each other. Maybe something that Kelly is looking for is what Courtney has, you know? So with that said, my career journey has been incredibly nonlinear, very non-traditional, although it sort of started out seeming traditional, I guess. I am a lawyer by trade. I used to be a public defender for 6 years in the Bronx. I am based in New York on Lenape lands. And that was like my dream career to be a public defender, was all I was working towards for so many years. Is the reason why I went to law school and all of that. But you know, life as it would have it had me burning out of that job about 3 years in. So 3 years after that, I really had my, it took me that long. And speaking of journey, like we all have our own timeline. You know, I have a lot of clients, a lot of folks in the Leadership Accelerator, kind of just in the Embrace Change community in general. And as women of color and people of color, I feel like we feel a lot of pressure from like timelines we pick up from the media, from our family, from our communities, from, I don't know, capitalism and financial
Mhm.
strain and stuff of like, I need to be here by X.
Right.
So
You're 30.
I,
Why isn't everything figured out at age 30?
yeah, I know it's so artificial, right? So I like to, you know, use my example to detail to people that like there is no timeline. Everyone has to get to where they're getting in their own time, and the journey itself is like part of the beauty of that. So it took me another 3 years to
Hmm.
really be like, okay, I have to make a change. And there was a key kind of light bulb, light switch moment there that I write about in my book, Don't Stay in Your Lane, which very transparently details the good, the bad, and the ugly about my career change. Um, this is important to me not to like sugarcoat things for people and put out like a
Right.
false facade. Um, but anyway, I remember distinctly this one moment. I was in the courthouse in the Bronx, in the basement level of the courthouse, nice shiny new glass courthouse, talking to a relatively new client. And you know, I was explaining to the client and his family like what was going on in the case. And I interacted with them in a way that I was really like not proud of. Like I'm happy to get into the details, but like I won't get into all the weeds right here, but I do talk about it very clearly like in my book. But there's this moment where I had like an out of body experience and I was like, what are the words coming out of your mouth right now, Cynthia? Like
Mm-hmm.
what you are saying to these folks right now is so far from what you came here to do. And I realized I have become an apologist for a system that I don't believe in, the criminal legal system. And, you know, the whole cycle of like Black and brown people being put in jail and incarcerated in all kinds of ways. I just like my burnout had turned into this not great moment. And then I was like, okay, I need to make some changes. So that was like a big moment. And again, happy to talk more about it if people are curious. But after that, I had to do a lot of soul searching. So I
Hmm.
took an unpaid sabbatical, which I'm very grateful to my former union for like having such great benefits. And so I could take this time to, even though I didn't have a salary, I had a job I could go back to if I wanted to just step away and be like, what's going on? What do you want to do? Got into my head that I wanted to work for myself, started my business. Much like you, I feel like Niaju, like how we kind of both started our own businesses, and then from there I just iterated. Like the first version of my business did not work, couldn't get any paid clients, you know, so I had to make a pivot, made another pivot, and the third one, like my 50th experiment in my business of like throwing spaghetti at the wall was career coaching.
Hmm.
And started really small, but like snowballed almost immediately. And I just followed that passion of mine, niched down really hard to specialize in working with women of color before career coaching was like even a thing. You know, got some heat for that or whatever, but I felt very strongly about it. This is that value stuff that we'll talk about.
Right. Right.
And then it's all kind of been history from there, I guess, to be
All
corny
right.
about it.
Thank you so much for sharing that journey that you've had with us thus far. And I think that a couple things I want to highlight. One is you paying attention, noting your burnout that you experienced, you know, after the 3 year point. And then
Mhm.
that scene you took us to in your narrative about being in that basement and telling this family something that didn't feel right to you. I
Mhm.
felt that that was a conflict that was going on, an internal
Mhm.
conflict with what you're putting out into the universe and how you felt
Mhm.
internally. So we're going to
Mhm.
come back to that, but I want
Mhm.
people to latch on to that, the fact that she noticed that something was off in terms of her internal value system, most
Yeah.
likely at that point in time. And then
Right.
finally, just the part of your nonlinear career. You've been a lawyer, you took a sabbatical, you've iterated your business multiple times,
Mhm.
and success is not a straight line in terms of where you are today versus where you are 3, even 5 years ago. And
Mhm.
so we just want to give space and validate that it's not a straight line for most folks, and that it's okay to have fits and starts and take a step back before going forward. For all of
Mhm.
you who are listening out there, so you want to emphasize that message, and thank you for sharing that. And so, on today's topic, values are so often discussed in the personal space in terms of how you live your life externally, how you relate to your family, your friends, what you pursue. But in my viewpoint, we're whole people, we're holistic,
Yeah.
and we can't divorce how we are in our personal lives, from our professional lives. They're one and the same and impact one another. And
Mhm.
so, as whole human beings dealing with this false premise of this split,
Mhm.
um, you know, our values should play a role in navigating our work. And so, in your view, can you share why is it so important to incorporate values into how we look for work and advance our career?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I think it's for folks who want to feel a certain level of alignment and meaning and fulfillment from your work, which I say this as a threshold thing at the beginning because not everybody feels that way, and that's great too. Like I have in the past worked with clients who are like really a very utilitarian perspective, like we live within capitalism, I got bills I need to pay, I need my job to pay my bills, I need my career to pay my bills. That's great,
Mhm.
like please, more power to you. There are other folks who also want that extra bit of like meaning and alignment and feeling of like I'm in this for something more, in their role or in their mission or like what have you. So this is more for folks who feel that way. And I think if you do feel that way, then it's really a matter of simply job searching and being intentional about building your career in a way that is going to work for you in the long term. Because if you don't make sure that there is that level of alignment, you will experience these, like you pointed out in my story, like these moments where you are at odds with yourself internally because you realize that there's a values misalignment. It's uncomfortable, it's stressful. Like I went to therapy for that because I was like so stressed out all the time about my job. I was super burnt out, I couldn't like live my life outside of work. So there's a lot of these health, life, and career negative ramifications that will happen if you don't prioritize thinking about your careers. Thinking about your values, identifying your values, and then putting them, kind of doing a values forward approach to your career in general and your job search. So yeah, I would love to hear from folks in the audience and all over the world here joining us today. Like, what are the values that you look for in your work, your job, your next role, your workplace? And to level set too, what I'm talking about when I say values, it could be anything, right? But it's simply things that are important to you, and that's why we have to do that internal work, that internal reflection. And maybe it's things like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We see that a lot these days. Maybe it's a value of recognizing this whole holistic person, people who have families and who are raising children or taking care of elders or supporting multiple family units outside of the job. Like, so the proxy is like, does this place have like parental leave or family leave policies? um, Maybe it's environmental, like maybe your values are around environmental or climate justice. Is this organization or this company worried about its environmental impact and doing things around that? So those are examples of some values of what's important to you. And then we'll talk all about like how to suss out oh my god, hi Nadia. And thank you so much, Kelly. We'll talk about how to suss it out, but yeah, would love to catch up on the chat too.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you for that baseline. Thank you for validating those who recognize that, for them, they may not need to find their values located within their work environment, and it's a
Yeah.
means to the end of paying their bills. But for
Mhm.
those of you who do feel that pull, that calling to be in more values aligned work, I'd love to hear your definition of that very briefly. It is important to be, and I want to highlight the word being intentional. We can be intentional about the work that we pursue, what we'll accept, what we won't accept. And this is about getting to the mindset that's okay to center your values as you
Mhm.
move ahead to look for work that will bring you long-term fulfillment and hopefully success. And we'll get into some of those benefits, towards the end of the conversation.
Mhm.
And so one of the things in one of the articles that you have written, uh, about you mentioned listening to your gut when you are trying to navigate career change, and going back to that moment in the basement. How does one recognize whether or not their values are in alignment with their current work or workplace?
Right. And you're right. I did miss that point earlier about the definition of values aligned work. And to me, that's just when, after you identify what your values are and the things that are important to you, and preferably in an order of priority, then you can kind of go across and sort of like check the boxes. Does this particular job, this function, this role, or this workplace team, larger company mission or organizational mission, does it comport with those? Does it meet those? Does it check those boxes? Is it, aligned? Or is it kind of intention? That's
Hmm.
my definition of values aligned work.
Okay.
And then, yes, thanks for bringing up the Listening to Your Gut blog post. It's actually a 2-part blog post on my website, and we'll drop the website later. But if you want to look now, it's embracechange.nyc/blog. And if you kind of Google that with Listening to Your Gut, you should find it. But in that 2-part blog post, I talk about kind of like a four I don't know, sequence way to tune back into your intention. Because I think what happens a lot for us as people of color, especially also women of color, non-binary people of color, is there's a lot of noise in our lives and in our workplaces.
Hmm.
So how do you kind of shut out some of the noise for a second and hone back in on what is it you actually want? What do you actually believe? What is actually important to you? If you took aside what your parents think, what your sisters or your brothers think, or your cousin or your family or your mentor or your kids or all of that, what media wants for you or whatever, and you focused on what you want, then that can always and should always, arguably, be like your North Star. Um, so that's why I talk about like the importance of listening to your gut and honing in on that. And frankly, we have to set aside time and be intentional, as we've been saying, to like do this stuff. Oh, thanks, Dolores, for dropping the site. Very helpful. Um,
And I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no. I got you. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Dolores, for sharing that. And I was just going to say that it's we just want to validate that it's okay to listen to your internal feelings. They're there for a reason, and it's about trusting yourself.
Mhm.
You are No one knows you better than you. Neither Cynthia or I, whether you regard us as experts in any way, shape, or form, we're not an expert on you. And so, if you're navigating a situation and something feels off, and that feeling does not go away, that's meaningful. And so we just want to validate you and paying attention to that. And that could be the catalyst that could lead to career change, self advocacy, or any number of things in order to settle and resolve that feeling of something that's just not right. And we just want to
Yeah.
validate that and encourage you in that direction.
Right. So if I could share 2 things kind of related to that, that might be helpful. One is that there are these warning signs, right? Like I talked about in my story where I had that kind of out of body moment where I was like, what's happening, Cynthia? Like, what are and I sort of heard it from like a witness perspective. So things like that might be happening. You might be experiencing differences in like your health or your energy around your work, or like your feelings about stuff. Like that's all kind of your gut or your intuition trying to tell you things, like the body keeps score. It's stuff like that. So we always have to keep attuned to that. That's your own self kind of having like a cry for help. We must listen to that part of you.
Hmm.
And then it could also be other things, like just if you're feeling more, I don't know, like have less patience around work things, or certain things are bothering you a lot more than previously. You're doing your job different than when you started a year or two ago, and you're feeling like it's not going in a good direction. Those are all warning signs. And actually, this is reminding me, I have a quiz somewhere also linked on my blog that's like, should you really change careers? It's also in the beginning of my book, Don't Stay in Your Lane.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times people do think, okay, this is not working for me right now, so therefore I must throw the whole thing out the window and then start from scratch in this other direction. And as someone was saying earlier in the chat, it can be kind of scary and intimidating if you don't know what your new career should be. That was Dolores, I think. So what I would say is, yes, maybe you should change careers, maybe you shouldn't change careers. Like, again, like Niatu was saying, we don't know, like only you can tell you. But I do have this like 10-question quiz that you can fill out that just gives you a little bit of a litmus test, a little bit of a temperature check on like, is this a changing career situation, or is this a changing jobs or changing bosses or changing something else more incremental situation? So that's one thing, the warning signs. The other thing is that I want to get your thoughts on this too, Niatu, but like one metaphor that has been coming up again and again for me recently, as I have a new cohort of the Leadership Accelerator starting, and planning some bigger and more, even more exciting things in 2023 for women of color, is like we do have to learn how to trust ourselves, because all of our lives, like since the womb, we have been trained to not trust ourselves. And that is to serve bigger things like capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy culture, etc. So it's really easy for us to tell you all, like, yeah, you just have to trust yourself, listen to your gut, etc. But I also want to acknowledge that that in and of itself can be very difficult, because when your entire life and your entire career, it's like you've been looking at yourself in what is the equivalent of like funhouse mirrors, and your reflection is so distorted because you've been gaslit, because you've been microaggressed, because you've been fired erroneous, like without cause, because you've been subjected to actual outright racism in your career. All of that stuff, if you then have like a true mirror that shows you how you really look, at first you're going to think that that's wrong. Like you're going to have so much resistance to that. And so I just share this funhouse mirrors metaphor because there might be people who, you know, could relate to that. And I want you to think about, does that apply to you? And is that maybe the root of some of the resistance you might be feeling about what's happening in your career right now?
Right. That's a really powerful point and a really powerful metaphor. And I think it is important to acknowledge. I usually use the caveat, this is easier said than done. And I forgot to
Yeah.
say that with the trust yourself piece, right? And
Yeah.
so thank you for bringing that
No,
up.
I mean,
And
yeah.
yeah. You get to the heart of some really crucial stuff in that we have been, we're not raised in a vacuum. We're raised within a family unit, within a culture, and then within a society that has different rules and messages that come to you based on who you are. If you are
Mm-hmm.
a person of color or another underrepresented minority, a lot of those messages are negative, and you end up internalizing them to some degree, which causes you to question yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
you might feel like you may not know your own true mind and how you truly feel. And
Mm-hmm.
so to have to peel back those layers to really get to the root of who you are and what it is you want, you might be
Mm-hmm.
fighting through your parents saying you need to be a doctor, a lawyer, or
Yeah.
engineer because
Mm-hmm.
you're an immigrant and they want you in your first generation and they want you to have the most stable, successful career possible.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you might be an artist at heart. And so how do
Mm-hmm.
you separate those messages from your family, from society, what success looks
Yeah.
like in order to
Yeah.
navigate correctly? So it's really important to recognize how our identities play into this, the
Yeah.
messages we've received, what our current internal narratives say,
Yeah.
and are those our true internal narrative or one that we've adopted because of what we received. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of work to unpack that, but working with individuals like myself or Cynthia, your therapist, people in your corner, it's important
Healers.
to unpack those things. Yeah,
Yeah.
to really try and get down to the root of who you are. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of what I sort of advocate for is start with yourself. All
Mm-hmm.
career change, all advancement, all the conversation we have right now in terms of values, it's about going internal first before you go
Yep.
externally.
Yep.
And so I'll use that to transition
Mm-hmm.
in asking you, how can professionals identify and prioritize their values in the first place in order
Mm-hmm.
to, start applying them to their career journey?
Yeah. Happy to talk about that. Also, I know Kelly has a question in the chat, so I don't know how you like
Okay.
to, if you want
Oh,
to answer.
sure, sure. I hadn't had a chance to get to that. Let me get to that real quick. Yes, thank you, Kayla. Let's go ahead and address her question.
Okay.
So I've worked for a large healthcare system for 8 years. I just finished my master's in healthcare admin and business, but was told that I haven't made enough lateral moves, supervisor, manager, etc., to automatically move into managerial position. I can't see the rest of it. Hold on.
I think it says, despite all my leadership roles, and I refuse to start from the bottom, what should I do?
Yeah, yeah. So you can take a first stab at that,
Yeah,
Cynthia.
and I want to hear your answer too. So, Kelly, you've answered your own question. You refuse to start at the bottom, so don't start at the bottom. To me, that's like, okay, great. You have you put your stake in the ground. You're not going to start from the bottom, and you shouldn't, like you shouldn't need to start at the bottom. Then what should you do from there? And so once you decide that in the first negotiations with yourself, Nadia Diallo, who's in the chat too, who's also a negotiation expert and friends with both of us, I think would say similar things, but Nadia jump in as well. But the first negotiations with yourself. It's always like the what Niantou was saying about like everything does begin internally. Once you fully believe that you're not someone who would start at the bottom, like that makes no sense. You're going only up from here. Then other things will fall into place. So what is it that you have to do to make that happen? Maybe it's a matter of I don't know, revamping certain things about how you talk about it, how you present your experience so that you frame it more like managerial level stuff, publicly, online, etc. Maybe it's about developing your thought leadership and speaking up more and increasing your visibility in your general industry so that people are looking to you as a leader already. Maybe it's about investing in your career and getting some external strategic support to figure out what all the steps are. It could be any number of those things, but I think the most important thing is that you not get confused by the messages you may be receiving and just realize that those are the wrong messages. Like you need to maybe face in a different direction. What do you think, Niantou?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that you have said so far. The first negotiation does begin with you. And if you are dead set on making this managerial move, that's what we want you to do. And it's about bringing other aspects of your career platform at large in alignment in order to convince these external audiences that you're ready for that. And so we spoke about internal narratives just now. What's the external narrative that you're sharing with these audiences? If you haven't directly managed people as direct reports, have you managed people on project teams? That's analogous experience you can transfer over to saying you have some degree of managerial experience. And so it's looking at what you do have and how can we frame it, how can we spin it, not to be disingenuous, of course, but how can we, frame it in such a way that is connects the dots for your audience for them to
Mm-hmm,
see the value that you're ready to bring to the table. And so that's the
mm-hmm,
work that needs to be done, whether it's something to do with yourself, whether you invest, as Cynthia said, in having that support to help you think through these things. Those are some of the ways you can start to turn the message for that external audience. We got to start believing it yourself. I wrote an
mm-hmm,
article. Do you believe your own hype? Is the title of that
mm-hmm.
article.
Ooh,
And if you
love
don't
it.
believe your own hype,
Yeah,
then
no,
is the person across the other side of the table going to believe it themselves, right?
yeah.
And so that's a huge part of the journey. Thank you for a great question.
Yeah, and
Um,
if I could
and
bottom line it real quick, like we're talking about
mhm,
being values forward here, right? And I'm not a job search expert by any means. Like that's not my like main whatever, but it all often comes up, and so we will talk about it. But values first job search. Also, I always recommend a people first job search, and then here it's like you have to really just be comfortable putting yourself out there and embodying this leadership you. I would say to Kelly and anyone else that this resonates with, and then people will believe. Because if you don't believe, people will not believe. But if you do believe, people will believe. So, in a way, it's simple. In a way, it's very complicated. And
right.
real, because I can't not be me. I saw Dolores said not trusting yourself is imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And I would encourage all of you, especially anyone who's a woman of color, person of color, non-binary person of color, um, Google this article. It's co-authored by Rushka Tolshan, and it's a Harvard Business Review article. It's called "Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome." Because there's a difference between what is actually imposter syndrome and what is like cultural white supremacy, like systemic kind of patriarchy plus capitalism telling you certain things. So check that out. I wanted to complicate that just a little
All right, no worries, no worries. There are layers to all of this, right? And so it is important to know, misdiagnosis is not helpful. And so to misdiagnose yourself with imposter syndrome, we don't want to place that label on anyone if
bit. Yeah,
that's not what truly is going on, right? So that's
right.
a great note. So getting back to where we were going before that
Yeah.
wonderful question that we fielded, what can professionals do to identify and prioritize their key values?
Right. So I think this relates to what we were talking about earlier, which is you have to make the space and the time to shut out all the noise and kind of focus back on yourself a little bit. So if you can block that time, it might be 30 minutes, it might be 15 minutes, it might be a 3 hour block or like a day on a weekday, on a weekend, if you can get that or something. Make that time and space because you have to clear your mind a little bit to reground yourself. And then make a list. This is all I'm a super practical oriented person and none of this is rocket science. Okay. So just make a list of the things that are important to you. What are you liking from your current job or role that you want to keep having in a future one? What do you not like? What is missing from the current situation that you want in a future thing? Just keep a running list. And maybe if you're like me, you think of things at random off times. I'm on the bus, I'm in line, I'm in the shower, like whatever, I think of things. So keep a running list, whether it's on your phone or on paper, who cares? Either is fine. And just make the list for, let's say, 2 weeks. By 2 weeks, you probably have a good snapshot of the things that are important to you. And then I would say, now it's time for the next step, which is to put them in order. And this is where I think a lot of people actually fall into a trap of overwhelm or analysis paralysis, Niantu, which is they have this super long list, maybe, of all the things that they want. And it's like, well, how am I going to find this job? Or where am I going to like get this thing? Because it's like 100 things, or it's probably not 100 things, probably like 15 or
It
20 or
shouldn't be
whatever.
100 things, maybe. That's a little long.
Right? And so don't let that be you. You don't have to fall into that trap. What you are going to do at that point is you are going to prioritize these and you're going to put them in order of importance. So if you think hypothetically, I have this one job offer, it meets criteria 1, which is your first value, whatever, but not criteria 10, then you know where they are in relation to each other, right? 10 is less important to you than 1. So do that exercise for all of them. You'll get them into some type of number 1 to however many list of priorities. And then if you want to be real, like bonus homework, extra credit about it, make sure you can draw a line at some point on this list. You've got your must-haves above it and then your nice-to-haves below it. So there's a line somewhere there. Identify where that line is, and then you'll really be doing future you a favor because you'll be able to just run different job offers through it and figure out what passes the test and what doesn't.
Right.
That,
And yeah,
yeah.
I think that's really helpful. And it's there's an exercise that I offer to my clients, which is very similar in that I
Mhm.
have a preset list of values, work related values they can choose from, but also
Yeah.
leaving space for them to add their own values, which I maybe
Yeah.
probably didn't think about.
You
And
have to
then
think.
they can rate them and choose their
Mhm.
top five. And in my exercise is the top five. Because
Uh-huh.
it's gonna be difficult if you get,
Yeah.
maybe above 10 to actually search for a role that's gonna hit, in a company that hits 10 values. That might be kind of a tall order potentially.
Uh-huh.
So keeping that to that top five.
Yeah.
And it's those things that if they were to be compromised, you would have to turn tail and run. That
Yeah.
might be a way to think about what are your top values, in
Yeah.
terms of what would make you not want to be in an environment if those things were not present.
Mhm. Yeah, because we have to hold ourselves accountable to what we say too. You know what I mean? So I love that. And thanks everyone's super helping out in the chat. Thanks,
Yeah,
Justine.
love everyone sharing links,
Yeah,
sharing,
so great.
responding. So thank you all for being so active in the chat. Really, really do appreciate that. And let's move on to this next piece of it. So after you
Yeah.
actually identify these values, how in the world do you operationalize them and, apply them so they can influence your search process and the ultimate
Mhm.
destination that you land in?
Yeah, so I mean, I think where the rubber hits the road with this is that once you've done that work to identify, and I mean, I think if folks like DM you, you would like point them to that resource that you have near you. And like I have a similar one I'm remembering now from the old days that I call like a wheel exercise. So if anyone wants that for the values identification piece, like just DM me and I'll send it to you. But once you've done all of that, then it's a matter of when you go out with your people first kind of job search strategy, which to me means talking to people, building your network, activating your network, meeting new people, talking to them, like in this chat, for example, to see if there are opportunities that align with your values. That's what operationalizing it means to me, besides then like garnering a bunch of job offers that you run through kind of your test. Um, of course, people always want to know, well, like, how do I know if like a future job or position or role or whatever is going to be aligned with my values? And like there's good news and bad news. The bad news is you never will know until you're in the job. Like you just never will know 100% until you've been in it, and probably been in it for like 3 to 6 months potentially. The good news is you can still maximize your chances of making sure that they're aligned. And that's by kind of like doing your intel and your research and your homework ahead of time. And there is this, I don't know if, so Justine's actually on the Embrace Change team, one of our VA operational support folks. So head over to Justine if you need more EA or VA help. But maybe Justine can find this refinery article that is from years ago where I'm talking about like there's 6 ways that you can look up organizations and like find ones that would be more aligned with your values.
Right.
Um, there's
If I
that
could
piece.
interrupt you before,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
sorry, before we jump, are you about to get into like the really practical ways of screening employers?
Yeah, but I was going to say one more thing too, which is
Okay. All right.
related to Sally's
Okay.
point, which is this flip too, which is like you can also signal out there what your values are. And then this is super like, Jedi moves. Then you have recruiters coming to you, looking for you and asking you to apply to jobs that are values aligned with you. And you signal that by speaking up about things like speaking on panels, talking about it online, writing about it online, shooting videos like Nyatu and I do about like different things. Um, so I don't know if this is answering your question.
Yeah, I think it is. And so you
Okay.
highlighted the need to, after you have, found out what your values are, is to,
Mhm.
and prioritize them, is to try and research companies to figure out if there's alignment. Through speaking to people is your key piece of
Mhm.
advice, and getting
Yeah.
this done on the early side. If you're
Hmm.
at the offer stage, I would say that's a little too late to be figuring out if this is a values aligned company. And so want
Hmm.
to, encourage all of you to do this as far ahead of time as possible. One
Hmm.
part of what I like to advise my clients to do is to develop values-based questions. So after you
Hmm.
actually identify and prioritize your values, what questions can you ask based on those values to screen the employer to see if they are truly a match? So, for
Hmm.
example, if I say work-life integration, not balance. If work-life
Hmm.
integration is something that's important to you, you might ask, well, employer X, how does your company support your employees with families, right?
Yes. Right.
What policies and practices and culture are in place that support people with families? So it's an
Hmm.
open-ended question. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have a kid. It means you care about your
Hmm.
family, right? And
Or you
so
care
this is a
about
way,
people who have
or
families.
people have families. Yeah, it's something you want a
Yeah.
workplace that is also supportive of others, whether you have a
Yeah.
family or not, right? And so that's an example of a values-based question you can ask to an employer to see what the response is, to see if they truly are what they say they're about in terms of
Hmm.
supporting, healthy work-life integration. I
Hmm.
had another client who was at the executive level, and he valued adventure and risk taking in his workplace. And so he had
Hmm.
a question about whether how new ideas were received within that company's environment, and
Hmm.
also if they allocated any capex to go and pursue new opportunities and take
Hmm.
risks. So that's a
Hmm.
very direct question on his value of risk taking and adventure. And
Hmm.
so both Cynthia and I think would agree and encourage all of you, after you've identified your actual values and prioritize them, what questions can you create that will help you actually, that you can ask, and in networking and interviews, ask to the employers to screen for these values and get actual data and feedback.
Yeah. Right. And what I love about what you just shared is that it actually gets to what the company or the organization is doing in terms of their actions, because people can say anything. Like, and I'm
Hmm.
always telling my clients too, because we're continually at risk of like being gaslit by certain things. The way to sort of break through the noise and see the real truth there, is to focus on people's actions over their words, and leadership's actions over their words, because where are they allocating money? What are they putting time and resources into? That's going to tell you what they really care about. But they might be like, yeah, we have really great supportive family policies or whatever. And like, if they're not getting into any specifics, like, that's not a very good answer.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. And so I think, one thing we have to recognize is that in our current climate, there's a lot of virtue signaling going on. We see it online, if you open Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, we have people raising their hand, they support cause X, Y, or Z. Companies are racing to put out, press statements, changing the language on their website to be more inclusive, focus on social justice, DEI, sustainability. All these are of growing importance in our consciousness these days.
Hmm.
But the reality of what is on the reality of what is on their website might not match the lived reality being an employee there. And so that's what this is all about in terms of doing effective screening to make sure that their talk matches their walk. Are there
Yeah.
actions in place that actually support what it is they say they support?
Mhm.
And you brought up some really interesting tips. You can remember a few from that article about
Yeah,
how people can go about screening companies, against the virtue signaling and all the glossy stuff they say on their
yeah.
websites. What do you suggest people do?
Right. I mean, frankly, I don't trust anything that people put out here because everything is PR. And I say this, myself too, as a CEO and a business owner. Like everything that we put out is intentional. Do you know what I mean? So that's why again, look at people's actions over their words. But a couple kind of like quick and dirty tips. If you're looking at a nonprofit, definitely look up their 990. That's their tax statement that they always have to file annually. There's different websites where you can do this for free and you can access it because it's part of the public record. You probably will only be able to see their, like if you were looking now, you might only see the 2019 or 2020 tax return because of the lag like that. But look at it and then look through. It's going to tell you a couple of key things. What is the budget that they're working with, like overall operational budget? It also, if you scroll down to a further section, there's like a spreadsheet looking page, and it will tell you the highest earning people in that nonprofit. Sometimes it includes board members, sometimes it's simply the ED and like whoever else. That also gives you a bit of a benchmark as far as salaries, keeping in mind that this will be like a 2-year lag type of thing. So that's huge for negotiation, which comes up a lot for me and my clients. So 990s for nonprofits. A lot of organizations won't have that. Private companies won't have that. Public companies won't have that. Government won't have that. But you can look up other things about those places. So I'd look into the annual reports. I would talk to people, like we've said several times already, because people are probably going to be your best window into what the on the ground day to day is like. And yeah, I would also, I mean, this is a little bit, I don't know, maybe a little extra, but this is where you see my lawyer brain comes out. I would look for if they've had a lot of lawsuits against them for discrimination or EEOC claims against them, different things like that, because those are major, huge red flags. So looking for press releases to find those and things like that. And then the third and final thing I'll say here is look at who is on their leadership. Is their executive leadership team all, white presenting men of a certain age? Like that tells you where their priorities are. If getting up there is something that you want to do and you do not fall into that demographic. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, those are some really great, I think I didn't know those tips until I read the article that you were quoted in,
Yeah, it's a
about
refinery
researching
article.
990s, yeah, and then,
Yeah.
research in public records, and so, at the end of the day, we're encouraging you to do as much due diligence as you can.
Yeah.
It's one of the jokes that I make about, the job search and looking at employers is that people spend more time planning their vacations than they do researching employers, right? If you're going on vacation, you want to make sure that your hotel is going to have great accommodations, you're close by things, there are
Yeah.
activities you care about that you want to do,
It's good
all for
rating.
your yeah, right.
Yeah.
All for your enjoyment for that 1 week or 2 week stay, right? You do all this research for 1 to 2 weeks out of your entire life, whereas with an employer, you're going to be there for every single day, a year plus,
Mhm.
right? Ideally. And so that level of vacation research should more than be applicable to your job search in really, researching, digging into employers because you're going to be living there more than you live at home, which is the reality of being an adult, unfortunately, unless you work for yourself and get to work from home all the time, right?
Mhm.
But jokes aside, we want you to make sure the destination that you land in is going to be a great fit that's going to set you up for success, which is why we're advocating for you to look, for your values, and place them at the center, or very high in your search process. And as you look for what works and doesn't work for you, Cynthia, in your view, what are some of the signs should consider positive indicators that a workplace does match our values, and
Mhm.
red flags that we should just run from altogether?
Yeah, I mean, every case is different and it depends because if everybody in the chat even is going to have a different set of values and a different level of priorities to those values and is looking at a different set of job function or industry or what have you. So it's going to be very, very case and person specific. But do also keep in mind there's like no perfect job or whatever. I feel like the perfect job would be like I mean, who wouldn't rather be on vacation or like spending time like doing whatever they want as opposed to working? You know, I mean, most of us would rather that. So I want that to be clear too. Like, let's not be chasing unicorns. I'm again super practical, somewhat cynical person. You know that about me now. But it's like, yeah, what are the priorities for you, and like, what are the actions you see this employer, this team, or this supervisor doing that are in line, in lockstep with that? What are some things they're doing that are like, ooh, that make you and your gut and your intuitive sense be like, oh, it's a little bit questionable. You know, like, oh, they say that they support families and stuff. And then also when I talked to this other person on the team, like they didn't get to take more family leave than 2 weeks or something like that. You know, like you can see that those don't match. And those
Right.
are where the red flags will be. Um, so, you know, you basically are coming up with your test, looking at the evidence, seeing where it matches and where it doesn't match, deciding if that's good enough for you, and then you kind of make your decision.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really practical and straight. It's not necessarily rocket science. We're not saying it's easy, but it's not also super complicated because, again, you're
Yeah.
starting with yourself. What is important to you? That is the first and most important step because without clarity on your own personal views,
Mhm.
needs, and having that prioritization of your values, you don't have a strong stance against which to compare the information you're receiving. And I
Yeah.
think the core thing that Cynthia is saying is to look at their actions, not what they say, what did they
Yeah.
do? And so that was my first time including that policy piece and how I framed the question. But what policies are in place that
Mhm.
actually support the values the companies say that they have?
Mhm.
Are they actually involved in the community? Are they donating money to causes they say they stand for? Are they
Mhm.
having public stances on controversial issues?
Mhm.
Are they putting their money where the mouth is, quite literally, because that's what
Mhm.
businesses
Mhm.
do, right? So watch what they do, not what they say. I think is the core
Yeah.
takeaway, but it
Yeah.
starts to understand where you're coming from in the first place. And then if it
Mhm.
doesn't match, then you run. And the one last point I'll make is in addition to speaking to current employees, that's always helpful,
Mhm.
but they
Mhm.
may have a more vested interest in presenting
Mhm.
a slightly rosier picture of what it is like to work there because they want you to join the team.
Yeah.
So speaking to former employees as much as possible is helpful. So when
Yeah.
you're looking up a company, looking for people on LinkedIn, you can filter for past employers. So if you're
Uh-huh.
looking to work for, I don't know, Macmillan Books, you put in Macmillan Books as the company and hit the past employee, past employer, and then people who used to work there will appear in your search, and you can reach
Mhm.
out to those folks.
Yeah.
Um,
Love it.
and
So practical.
we got to be practical, right? So that people have
Yeah.
tools and resources to use
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah.
Um, and as we can start to draw things to a close,
Mm.
I wanted to get your sense of, so far we've discussed how important it is to, incorporate your values into the job search,
Mhm.
how to identify them, how to screen employers for alignment. And once we've done all that work and we land somewhere that actually aligns, you
Mhm.
know, what are the benefits of having been intentional in pursuing
Mhm.
values aligned work and work environments?
Yeah, I mean, well, in a way, it's like everything, right? Like you will potentially be thriving in that place. You're not going to feel the anxiety, the internal cognitive dissonance that you would feel at a place that wasn't aligned with your values. You don't feel necessarily guilty about working there or like regrets about working there, questioning, self doubting all the time. I mean, there's so much of this kind of negative thinking that I think but can easily become a lens through which we see everything when we're in a job that's not a good values fit for us. And so you get to like leave all of that in the rear view and be easeful and actually focus on the things that you want to focus on, whatever that is to you, whatever your definition of success is, whether it is lining yourself up for that next leadership, promotion, thought leadership, industry leadership award thing, whatever, or it's that you are doing work that you can feel good about so that then you can focus on also living your actual life. You know what I mean? So I think there's so many great things. And Anusha's pointed out Glassdoor as a great resource place. There's also In Her Sight, INHERSIGHT, which is really great, specifically getting anonymous, confidential information from women about companies and how they stack up in terms of benefits for them, as well as Fairy God Boss is another one. So there's a lot of places out there that you can find increasingly. I mean, I wish there was more transparency, but there's a couple places you can look for stuff like that.
Great. And so we got a question from Sarinthia, and she's asking where would we find this information about a company. I think specifically she's asking about the 990.
Mhm.
Is there more info than the company name and the 990 we should Google to find it?
Well, first of
Any
all,
more?
it's for nonprofits only. 990s are only for 501c3s, like technically nonprofit. And sometimes you have organizations that have a fiscal sponsor. So they're like a nonprofit, but they're really technically a project of a larger nonprofit that has that 501c3 status with the federal government in the US only. So you wouldn't find a 990 for that project. You'd only find a 990 for that parent, like the fiscal sponsor entity. But you need an EIN to look most accurately, or you can put in the name of the nonprofit as well. The EIN is an employer identification number that all entities, whether you're a business, for profit, or nonprofit, you have to have that. It's like a 13-digit number or something like that. So you can use those to find a 990.
All right, great. No, thank you for answering that question.
Mhm.
And so, as we draw to a close here, I just want to highlight that, the benefit of this work at the baseline is your happiness in the
Yeah.
next work environment that you're going to be in. Both Cynthia and I would agree that we want our clients to be happy. Anyone listens to this stream, anyone that we, work, all professionals, we want you to be happy as possible in where you're
Mhm.
working, and being in values alignment would allow you to have a much greater chance of being so.
Mhm.
I'm sure you can all think of situations where your values were perhaps challenged a little bit or compromised, and at the worst level violated. Think about those situations and what that felt like to be in those situations, and then think about an environment that agrees with your values, supports them, and then also might even live them out in how they operate. That
Mhm.
is an amazing place to be, and that could, again, your happiness, potentially your longevity at the company, that might look different to different people. If
Or
you're
your
3 years and
longevity in
out,
life.
yeah, there we go, right? Workplace stress it makes us all live a little bit shorter, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to talk about both the career impacts of it. You might be more successful in such an environment, stay in that environment longer, climb the ladder if that's your goal. And then on the other side, in terms of, we are holistic here, your physical and mental health, those will also be supported within an environment that's more values aligned. So there is so much benefit to doing that work at the front end to figure out your values, prioritize them, draw out questions, speak to as many people as you can, and screen the employer when you have the employer in front of your face in an interview situation or you're networking to see if there's that fit. And this is the payout for getting those things. And
Mhm.
we just want to encourage all of you to do that to the best of your ability as we move forward.
Yeah.
um, you're welcome, Sarinthia. I hope that was helpful for you. And so, as we draw to a close, any final thoughts on the conversation that we had so far? And I have two pop questions that you weren't aware of.
Yeah. I mean, just underscore to everything that you just said there. I think I'll add one thing from our perspective because we do work predominantly or, almost exclusively with people of color, women of color and stuff, is that to me, my mission and my work is very important to me. And through you could parse that out into like actually a whole bunch of different values underlying my company mission. But for me, why I feel so strongly about it is exactly what Niatu you're saying is I'm not going to exaggerate and say like we're not saving lives here. All right, this work is not emergency room surgery. We're not EMTs, etc. And also, I know the difference between seeing someone in a job that is, in their own words, killing them versus a job that is helping that person really thrive and promoting them and advancing them and also doing good in the world. If you feel like you can be in that place of happiness, as Niachu was saying, like in your job, I know you're not only going to do better work for that employer, but also it helps all of us. And it really gets, I'm convinced that it's also a piece of the inequities that we face of like if you do look at life expectancy and the disparity between black folks, black women, and men in particular to white folks, That's a huge disparity. And I'm sure that a lot of that is because a lot of Black folks have to be in workplaces that are literally causing them higher blood pressure, higher cholesterol, higher anxiety and stress. And that has a real toll on people's health. So, in that way, I do take our work very seriously. And that's why I feel like so, I don't know, hyped about like making sure that our clients do find places that are a good fit for them and respect and value what they bring to the
Yeah.
table. And you can help make that happen by being super values forward in how you move in your career.
Exactly, exactly. Sorry, Nadia Diallo on this chat, she has been speaking very recently a lot about performance reviews, which is that's what's happening this
Mm,
time of year typically. And she brought out some research that she'd been reading about how Black and brown professionals are significantly underrated or get lower scores in performance reviews versus their white counterparts or the majority counterparts. And that's stressful. If we have an environment that by the dint of my skin color, I'm going to get, 2 or 3 points lower than my coworker when I'm doing the same work or even outperforming them,
mhm.
that is not good for my mental, emotional, physical
Yeah.
health. And I need to get out of that environment. And so that's something I actually have personal experience having a glowing mid-year review and a terrible year-end review, no feedback in between for me to know is even coming. And
Mhm.
so that was a very difficult, experience that I had my first
Yep.
job out of college, mind you. And, that's something I don't want anyone to ever experience. And so, doing this work ahead of time, checking with yourself, and find a way to ground yourself in your values and truth, especially as a person of color and underrepresented minority, um, it's important to help you do your best to attain environments that are supportive of you as you are. And that's what we're
Mhm.
advocating for, the baseline of the work that we do as coaches who literally say we're out here for professionals of color because we
Mhm.
know professionals of color go through different experiences that are more taxing and more challenging than those of the majority culture. And that's facts. I have to be unapologetic about that.
Yes.
um, but thank you so much, Cynthia, for all that you shared in this conversation
Yeah.
today. Two quick
Welcome.
final questions
Mhm.
that I love to end with. So, firstly, if you could go back and speak to know what you know now, after all you've been through, what
Yeah.
advice would you give to your younger self about career development?
Um, hmm. I would say, I mean, there's a number of things, but if I had to pick one and it was like in line with the theme for today, it would be trust the timing of your life. Stop being in such a hurry, being like, oh, I should have been here 5 years ago, 2 years ago. I should have got that other degree. I shouldn't have got that other degree. Like, just trust things as they unfold and then look at it and be like, okay, what does this tell me to do now?
I like that. That's beautiful. That's really, really great. And then final question for you.
Hmm.
What is bringing you joy right now?
Wow, you were really fast with that banner. I got go through that. People who don't do their own production behind the scenes, you don't know like everything that's involved in something like this. So also
Yeah,
just will take this moment to give me out your flowers for a fantastic high production value
I
live.
try
But
high moments.
yeah, so that's bringing me joy right now. What else is bringing me joy right now? Um, okay. This is bringing me joy right now. I'm starting a new cohort of the Leadership Accelerator program that I have for women of color and non-binary people of color leaders. It's the fourth cohort in a year, and like last summer, I had crowdfunded to start this program. I raised almost 50K to start it, and now we've trained like I don't know, we're getting close to 100 leaders now, which is super exciting. But this new cohort is starting, and at the same time that this new cohort is starting, which they're amazing. They're all rock stars, all of them.
Mhm.
I'll be posting about them soon on my LinkedIn and everywhere else on social. But as that is also happening, there's this really nice bookend moment that's happening, which is one of the members that was in the first cohort, the inaugural cohort. Um, we're now able to talk about this. It's been in the making for some time, but I can now officially say she is one of the 15 White House fellows for this entire year. Like out of thousands of applicants, the White House
Oh,
chose
wow.
her as one of the 15 of these fellows who are like mid-career leaders already, but they support somebody who's high up in one of those chief governmental positions in DC. So she'll be in the Social Security Administration, and it's just really awesome. So happy for Makini to like get this role that she's more than qualified for. And also I know that all of us as people in the US and also globally, like it's going to benefit all of us. I'm very excited for one of our grads to be in the White House, more or less.
That's absolutely amazing, and what
Thanks.
a good house, a White House to be joining at this point in time. We'll leave the politics out as for the moment, but politics is life, right? So Cynthia, before we part ways, where can folks find you?
Right. So, embracechange.nyc is my website. Everything is kind of linked from there. The banner is sharing about our relatively new speakers bureau for women of color. So check that out too. We have amazing speakers on there. On IG, you can find me at Embrace Change NYC. I do kind of more like edutainment, comedic value content over there. So check that out if you like. We are also on TikTok, but that's linked through the IG. And definitely, yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn if you have any questions. If you want any of the resources that I mentioned during this live, we can talk about it. I also have a really cool negotiation calculator for women of color based on past clients' negotiations to tell you literally the numbers that you need to be saying for stuff. So message me and I can send you all that stuff. Just give me a couple of days to get back to you. Sometimes I get a little behind.
All
Yeah.
right. Awesome, awesome. So it has been such a pleasure having you, Cynthia. Again, Cynthia is a dear friend of mine, a fellow amazing career coach doing wonderful work. Again, her focus is women of color, and she is an invaluable resource. If you're a woman of color listening to this, please, connect with her, follow her, consume her content. And thank you all for tuning into this broadcast today. We hope that we brought you value. Hope that gave you some ideas, some practical advice. If you did find value in today's broadcast, please do share it with your network so this can have more reach and help more people, which is the ultimate goal here. Any final words, Cynthia, before we close out?
No, just thank you everyone who's been in the chat. Lovelace, Hinsa, Adina, like you all have been amazing. We've been seeing everything you've been sharing. So keep connecting, keep networking, keep building, and we'll see you along the
All
way.
right. Thank you, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Niadu.
Thank you.